Welcome to Majesty in the Moment. I am Majesty AliNICOLE WOW. Thank you so much for joining me for this segment. For those of you who are new to my branding, I am cross-trained in over 200 areas and serve different industries. A published author of over 300 works for different niche markets. And I just provide different segments that are able to demonstrate different levels of what I provide, being cross-trained in these different areas. And so these segments are more impromptu, things that I feel guided. And sometimes I just come on and be present with the space to see what's most emerging. So we have anything from trainings to empowerment to different activations that I do. And sometimes I have clients that I work with during these particular segments. Well, something that is coming up for me to talk about, and I don't know if that will be the only, or this will be the only topic that I speak on during this particular segment, but it is in terms of making some distinctions as it relates to the higher self and the expanded self. We hear a lot about focusing on your higher self and connecting to your higher self, but one of the concepts that I've been sort of introducing more individuals to over the years is about really focusing on the expanded self, and which does contain the higher self concept, but it is from a very different dynamics. And what this entails is not so much of focusing on the different levels of the higher wisdom and realms that you can access, within you. It's all a part of that. But the expanded self is being able to be present with the longitudinal and latitudinal parts of you, the breadth and the depth, and not just looking at these hierarchy stages of what you achieve. And so the reason why this is important is to focus on the expanded self is because it is a more holistic premise that you really need to launch your life from, so to speak, and especially when you are emerging into a new phase. And so you hear me share a lot of different concepts, and sometimes people liken these concepts to new age teachings and things, and I don't really get into any of those frameworks, but I do leverage certain languages because I do teach on a very vast spectrum. But I just want to make it aware that a disclaimer, if you will, that there's not my premise of coming from, and I'm not being judgmental of different paradigms, just being very clear about my intentions when I share certain things. So even in talking about the higher self concept, because we hear a lot about that as it relates to spiritual enlightenment and everything. But again, I want to focus more on a practical aspect of the expanded self, which can contain that, but still in a very different, very different context. So again, why is this even important? It is important, as I mentioned, because it's coming from a holistic premise. We want to focus on the whole of who we are. And the expanded self also will contain those aspects and elements of you that maybe you don't really see those as being beneficial to you. But the whole of your experience is rich for a reason. And though we try to sometimes get rid of different aspects of us, I believe when we come into the wholeness of who we are, the true holiness, so to speak, there are different aspects of us that just no longer resonate within our anatomy, and those begin to shed away. Now, do you need to be intentional sometimes about letting different things go? Absolutely, absolutely. But it is looking at it in a very different context that, something that was good for you at one point may not be the best for you during this phase. And sometimes that's really hard for people to let go of, because when things have worked for so long, you like it's working. And if it's working and it's not broke, why try to fix something that isn't broke? And we hear a lot of that over the years, that particular saying or thought process, school of thought, so to speak. But the thing about it is you don't ever really want things to start breaking down to let you know that it's no longer a part of your experience. When you're connected more to the expanded self, you do get the more vast awareness in terms of what's emerging, what's no longer going to be serving, even if it's working now. The thing about focusing on a higher self perspective or even just higher levels of achievement is that those schools of thoughts, though they can work and have for many, can also be very distracting. Distracting to the point that you aren't aware of what's emerging and you don't know how to play and prepare from both sides of the track. Now, something that's working for you in the present, again, it's working, it could be good, but you may be looking to build your next phase off of that same premise or improving and leveling up that particular aspect or evolving it. And that's not really something you need to be doing, but how do you become aware of what is emerging? Well, this is where you start to get present, that even when things are going great in your life, so to speak, you have to ask the question, though this is working and this seems to be where I am in life during this time, is there something else that I need to be aware of? Is there something else that is emerging? Is there something else that I need to be preparing for? Now, preparation is not about, oh, something devastating is going to happen, so to speak. It's just preparing for the next phase. Are you shifting in your life purpose? Are you shifting in your life's dynamics? So that's important. Again, if you aren't aware of it and you are achieving different levels of results, and again, they're working for you, that can become a distraction. So you want to be able to engage your life in such a way where you can be present to know what is currently beneficial, of course, but also what is emerging. What is emerging? And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're letting go fully of what is being successful for you now, but it could be that there's additional components that want to come in to really enhance that experience. But then there will be times when you actually need to embark on something completely new. And like I mentioned, you don't necessarily need some type of disruption to occur to let you know that something else is emerging, something else is ensuing at this point. So how do you kind of slow down and not be distracted from the goodness that's going on? As I mentioned, it's about developing a practice of being present and asking questions that you just would not even think to ask yourself. Again, if something's going good and it's working, why would you try to think of another way to do something or incorporate something else? And again, that's not saying you get stuck and this is always going to work the way it is and that's where your mindset is. No. But of course, when we achieve something, we want to improve on that, right? And again, improving there's nothing wrong with that, so to speak. And I have a whole nother teaching on that and why that can be detrimental too. Again, it's about what are you evolving? What are you improving on? So being able to be present with the expanded self-awareness that can provide you with a greater context from, I would say, a more evolutionary expansion. That is the part of the self that I do focus most on and teach from that premise, if you will, is in terms of the evolutionary self, which contains the expanded self and the higher self, if you will, right? You want to know which directional aspect of you need to be leveraging. Sometimes you are going to be leveraging more of what seems to be the higher wisdom, but that's so limiting. And I'm going to go there, it is very limiting when I hear people talk about the higher self. And again, I get it. And there are elements and aspects of that definitely that have served many and can serve. But the context within itself, I guess, because there's just been so much around it that has sort of been diluted in terms of what it really entails. But again, the expanded self, the longitudinal, latitudinal, the breadth and depth of who you are is more of the evolutionary continuum. And that's where you really want to draw the base of your wisdom, so to speak, and be more present with the whole of who you are. The whole of who you are is much more than just higher, okay? Because if you are higher but not grounded, or higher but not expansive, that poses a limitation. Expansiveness within itself is a really non-limiting type of vibration, if you will, is because expansion it is ever kind of growing in a sense, and that's not necessarily in terms of a one-directional type of vantage point, right? So being able to be present again with the expanded self, which is the evolutionary self, that's where you want to draw from your primary base of wisdom. And simple practices, like I mentioned, is just getting present and asking yourself just questions just in terms of, what is something that I'm not aware of that I need to be aware of? And that can be in terms of any area of your life. But if you are intentional, you have specifics, yeah, it can be even better, because you can ask that in terms of, is it my well-being, my health? Is it career? Is it education? Is it relationships? You can be intentional in terms of what's emerging and what do I most need to be aware of as it relates to this particular aspect. Something that I teach in different levels of retreats and in being present with these types of processes, so to speak, is asking yourself, what are 3 to 5 things that I need to know? Asking God, asking Source, what are 3 to 5 things about this particular area or aspect that I need to know? Now, sometimes it may just be one thing that you need to know, but the reason why you want to ask is there 3 to 5 things, because what I know is that there's wisdom within wisdom, an insight within the insight. And you want to learn how to kind of compound that type of energy, if you will, is being able to see what is the wisdom within this wisdom, or being present for that. What's another aspect or element of this particular dynamics? So again, it's important to be able to ask yourself these questions. But there are also times when you need to just not ask the question, because the question can become distracting too. The answers are always all around us, and sometimes it's just being present and giving thanks in advance for the answers, for the wisdom, and not really asking questions. So you have to be able to learn how to discern. When you're operating from this more expansive context of you, you will know when and what part of you that you need to leverage. Again, we're talking about the wholeness of who you are, the expanded context. The reason why people can't really get the answers that they really need, again, is because they're focusing in really left brain, one-dimensional focus, even in a higher self context, level to level to level, right? But not a well-rounded, not inviting a well-rounded experience to present itself, or to be illuminated, I should say, be illuminated, because the experience is all around you. And this is something, even for myself, I'm in the process of doing, even now, is being more present with that expanded self and seeing what more is emerging and what are the things that need to level up, what are the things that need to level off. And sometimes it's not always the easiest thing to be able to discern, but this is where being present and paying attention will serve to your highest advantage. Will serve to your highest advantage. So I could get into breaking into a lesson around, this particular dynamics, but I think it's most important that in just introducing it to those of you who are sort of new to this, or those of you who maybe have been familiar with the higher self, so to speak, but you are wanting to learn more about expanded self-awareness, then starting with what I've talked about today is a great jump off point, for you. And then to keep building upon that, because what will happen within this context is that your own unique information for you will come forth of how you need to move forward. Sometimes the biggest detriment of self-help or different offerings to individuals, even for empowerment, is that it's such a fixed frame and gives you kind of the do's and don'ts around certain things. And people are unique individuals. I believe we all have triggers that can be beneficial, jump off points for us, trigger mechanics, so to speak. I love to do that with journal prompts. And a lot of my work is around that in terms of even publications that I provide, is to really bring forth people's own information. And the expanded self-awareness context is, how you learn about what's really in you. What is your unique blueprint, if you will, your unique template, your unique DNA and anatomy. And it's not a cookie cutter framework. That's why in terms of offering, well, here's what you do to do this, it's not going to work for everyone. But when you're present again with the expanded self-awareness, you'll know exactly what it is that you need to do. So before I kind of close out on this particular topic, how do you actually recognize that? Again, like I said, sometimes it's not the easiest thing to pinpoint, but you have to be present. And being present, there are synchronicities, that you can see and you can sense that will kind of guide you to the next step. We hear a lot about the breadcrumb effect in a sense, and it kind of works like that. But you kind of have to be a little bit more open in terms of your awareness and, just being able to know how to make the right moves, at the right time, and just allowing kind of the journey to unfold, I should say. I was going to say unflow, but unflow probably is probably the correct terminology. It's not really a word, but I would say the correct vibration is, because we need to be in flow. And we hear a lot about the flow state, and but when you're in your expanded context, again, you're going to get what's unique for you, and then you'll know how to start to take right inspired actions from that place of awareness. What is the awareness of your evolution? And something that I teach around this topic too is that individuals should always ask themselves, what is the evolution of my experience? What is the evolution of my journey? Because that's going to teach you a lot about your expanded self, so that you're not leveraging a part of yourself that you think is still relevant, or so maybe you haven't come into the newer identity that is trying to emerge, something that's going to be more authentic to who you have become, So I think I'm going to stop here on this particular topic. There's so much that I can share about this. And, on the note of kind of closing out in the expanded context, as many of you know, I operate from that expanded awareness of myself, different trajectories of who I am. You can see that play out in my branding. And that's why even as a content creator, so to speak, that I'm able to create on so many different levels, because there are so many different levels, so many dimensions to who we are, and not in a woo-woo way, just in a very practical way, right? And so there's information below. You can learn more about me, different offerings and opportunities, that I have, and different courses and products and things, and just other free content too that you can avail yourself to. So I love to operate again from the expanded context of who I am, bringing all of who I am to the table and being able to serve. And so in the moment when I came forth for this, that was what was most percolating, if you will, in terms of my awareness of something that I needed to talk about. So that's my impromptu segment rendering, for you during this time. So you can also look in the description. As I mentioned, you can find, learn more about me, and also playlist of other things that I do and other opportunities that I offer. So I hope that this has been beneficial to you, and that it really maximizes your moments and helps you to move forward in what you're doing in the present. All right. So thank you for joining me for this segment, and I look forward to being back with you soon. Take care and stay blessed.